that brings us to Cersei. So how will Cersei die? And I'm not saying if she's gonna die, because my question is how will she die? Because I will be pissed if Cersei does not die. If she survives after everything that she has done, it's like I get that like that could be a commentary on how the world is unjust and all that stuff. And people do seem to get away with that. But like in this show, she's like Maleficent, but like without like the Angelina Jolie like movie that Disney made that made you realize that it's like she wasn't necessarily the worst. It's like she doesn't even have any of that. She was actually terrible. Since she was little, she followed the example of her dad. She does have like her like Me Too aspects of like, like wanting to be like a woman in charge and kind of like having beef with the fact that men are able to do things that she isn't. So to a certain extent, I mean, you can call that redeeming if you want, but I think that there's other characters that do a better job of kind of like being champions for women. Again, she just has very few redeeming qualities. The witch tells her when she's younger that someone younger, she's going to be queen until someone younger comes along. So is that going to be Daenerys? And to me, she's very clearly lying about her pregnancy. Like, it's like, girl, please. Like, I've heard that one before. We all have. So the witch tells her that when somebody younger comes along, that she's no longer going to be queen. So is that going to come true? Is that Daenerys having come to Westeros? Is that just kind of foreshadowing? I don't know. But she's obviously lying about her pregnancy. I mean, anybody, at least being from Miami, something very typical here. It's a really easy way to keep a man. And again, she says in the second season, she tells Sansa that her biggest power is between her legs. So I think that that's kind of her just trying to use a last-ditch attempt to like, again, like ruin the Me Too movement in Westeros and be like a terrible human being by pretending she's pregnant and giving Jaime that guilt trip, and hopefully he won't kill her because he thinks she's pregnant. But I kind of, in terms of how she could die, I would love for Jaime to kill her because I think it's very poetic. They're twins. He did have the gumption to kill the Mad King because the Mad King was gonna literally commit genocide. And then yet Cersei did that. And she blew up the Sept and blew up a bunch of innocent people. She's destroying King's Landing. She's bringing in mercenaries from Essos, which, she's really destabilizing the region. So if Jaime has the same moral compass that made him kill the king and become the Kingslayer to save King's Landing, I think obviously from a writer's perspective, I would really want him to be the one that kills Cersei. If she commits suicide, I'm gonna be pissed because that's like not an ending befitting of somebody so evil. She needs to be killed. There is the option of the White Walkers killing her, which I think is actually a pretty good and interesting option. If she becomes a zombie, like a White Walker zombie, I feel like Westeros is screwed because her as like an actual lifeless zombie, which she already kind of is, like, I can't. There's no stopping her then. Then Westeros is gone if Cersei becomes a zombie. But I do wonder if the thing with Cersei, so it's like, are they going to be able to keep the White Walkers in that war north? I feel like it could very easily spread, to the south as well, since it's already snowing there anyway. So I feel like Cersei's demise may also be tied up in the war with the White Walkers, or not. Will Arya get her? So she's one of the last few people that are still alive on Arya's kill list, but I think that beef is already kind of old, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like Cersei already got, Arya already got her revenge on Walder Frey and all that stuff. Like, if she just goes around killing everybody that's harmed her and the Starks, she's never gonna have a life. All she's gonna be doing is going around Westeros killing people, which is why, whatever, we'll get into Arya in a second. One of the things that I think is gonna be interesting is, will the Hound take out the Mountain, which would leave Cersei vulnerable? So I think that that's an interesting part about the Cersei thing that I'd be curious to see how that plays out. And that brings us to the next question, will the Hound kill the Mountain? So when I was rewatching the first episode, I really kind of noticed that the Hound has really been one of the main characters, and obviously he was burned by his brother when he was younger. That's why his face is all messed up, and that's why he's afraid of fire. So will kind of going against the White Walkers make him not afraid of fire anymore? I think he was still spooked by fire in the 7th season and all that stuff. But again, he was confronted with his brother, who kind of looks like a zombie, when they had the meeting in the dragon pit. So again, and since the Mountain's a zombie anyway, and he's really the only one kind of really protecting Cersei, I really hope that the Hound gets him, and then again, we kind of see how that plays out. My 7th question is, will Arya die a hero, or will she die the executioner? So she actually calls herself the executioner, and in season 2, interestingly enough, one of the first people that she has the faceless man kill is the executioner, when she was kind of like the prisoner before she becomes like Tywin's like barmaid or whatever. So that's kind of like been part of her arc. I wonder if she's going to transcend that fate or become a victim to it. So the options are basically she becomes a hero or she remains the executioner. However, she's literally gotten away with murder. Like, of all the characters, like when she avenged the Red Wedding, like she like, I mean, in Spanish we say se le fue la mano. Like she went above and beyond to avenge the Red Wedding, which I don't know that that's necessarily the most noble thing to do. Like it's like she killed like Walter Frey and everybody he's ever met in his entire life. Like, and I mean, who knows if they were all even involved in the Red Wedding or they were just kind of there invited and they're like, oh wow, since I went to the Red Wedding, now I'm freaking dead. You know, poisoned and eating humans and all that stuff. So Arya's arc is pretty much like, you know, she became a killer. Mainly though, she broke an oath to the many-faced god, which I know that they're killers and all that stuff. And I kind of really loved at the end when she did kind of break free from that. And she's like, no, I'm Arya Stark and I'm literally going to go kill everybody. Like that I was really excited about. And I was really excited when she avenged the Red Wedding. But looking back, I'm like, okay, that seems like that was pretty much an entire, like she's gotten away with murder. I would still really like her to die a hero. And I think that one of the ways that she can kind of wash the blood off her hands is maybe by, again, saving Jon Snow, you know, dying a hero in the War of the White Walkers. I think it would be more redeeming for her to die in the war with the White Walkers than it would by killing a Lannister. I feel like killing the Lannisters for her would be more the same. So I'm hoping that she's grown enough to know that even if she is a killer, like there is a righteous way to be a killer, which is I think what Ned Stark was actually trying to say in the first season. You know, that was his whole thing. Like he's the one that you know, sentenced Will in the first episode to death, the guy that saw the White Walkers and all that stuff, but he carries out the execution. And he makes it very clear to Bran anyway, that that's the way you roll. You know what I mean? So it's like, there is something about being, you know, the executioner that could be righteous, but I just think that she has a tendency to just go left and to just be bloodthirsty and all that stuff. So we're going to have to see what happens to Arya, but she's still one of my favorite characters. So I just hope that she has a redemptive arc and she, you know, something amazing happens with her. So my 8th question is, will Sansa make a political power move? So Sansa's a character that in the beginning of the series, I found her super annoying and super into herself and all of these things that I'm sure everybody else did. I'm pretty sure that they positioned her kind of that way. She was beautiful. Cersei caught her eye. They brought her back to King's Landing, but then she went through hell. She went through hell. She went through hell. And then Ramsay, and rape. And so but she did get her revenge on Ramsay, but she hasn't gotten her revenge on the Lannisters. But again, is it in her best interest to necessarily get revenge on the Lannisters? It remains to be seen. She also saved Jon Snow in the Battle of the Bastards, lest we forget. You know, I know that she brings it up again in the 7th season, but it's true. She deserves a lot of credit for that. Like, that was a really, like, good move. She outwitted Littlefinger at the end of the day with Arya, which is, again, that guy has been, you know, very masterful in his manipulation, especially of her. So I think that the fact that she was able to, you know, whatever you call that, like the apprentice becomes the master or whatever, like she's kind of done that. So she's done a 360, but she still hasn't had really a big payoff for herself. Like aside from killing Ramsay, like I don't necessarily see how she's kind of gotten anything that's been worth all of her trouble. Like to me, she should be, since she's like the best political mind, I think that she should be like the Queen Elizabeth of Westeros. Like somebody that nobody expected to kind of sit on the Iron Throne or not, maybe just be the lady in the North. But I feel like she deserves power because she has proven herself as a political leader in ways that a lot of people have not. And I definitely compare her to, she has a lot of qualities of Cersei, but she has, I think that she has a lot of things that kind of save her, which I think she does have obviously a moral compass that Cersei doesn't have. So there's a lot of things that she holds that Cersei doesn't, but I think that she's very similar to Tyrion in a lot of ways, and at least in terms of their political savvy. So I think that her and Tyrion are really the most qualified if it's a presidential race for the Iron Throne. My vote would be a ticket with Tyrion and Sansa on it. Again, I see her as kind of like the Queen Elizabeth in the story, at least for me. And that brings us to question 9, which is, will Tyrion finally find happiness? So I feel like Sansa, he's been through a lot and he actually has a lot of what it takes. So I'm really hoping that he gets a win or at least a legacy or at least something. You know, he doesn't have children and all that stuff. So a lot of what's going on around him, I think affects him greatly, but he hasn't gotten a lot in return. And George R. R. Martin has said that Tyrion is his favorite character. So I'm hoping that there's at least something that Tyrion gets. And, you know, dying a hero could be great and all that stuff, but I think that dying a hero is more something for Jon Snow or Arya, whereas for Tyrion, I think ruling is something that he deserves and he's earned, at least in some way, whether it's Hand of the King or the Queen or something like that. He's been the best Hand of the King or the Queen, even though he's made mistakes. You know, he's like noble and flawed. So it's like he has a lot of the flaws that I think that we can all relate to, but he also has a nobility that I don't think any of his siblings have. Even Jaime with all of his redemption and all that stuff. Tyrion to me is the most noble. So I think that he deserves some form of payback. And I think that he wants the best for the realm, which is something that Varys talks about a lot. And I know that Varys is a bigger character in the books, but Varys does save Tyrion and take him to Essos, which is where he ends up getting with Daenerys. But Varys, I feel like there may be kind of like, you know, there may be a motivation there that hasn't been revealed yet. Or maybe not. Maybe he also wants the best for the realm. But I think that Varys has been scarred, obviously, you know, being castrated and all that stuff. And so I'd be kind of interested in seeing the comparison between Tyrion's fate and Varys's fate. You know, they've helped each other and all that stuff. They're kind of similar. But I think that Tyrion has a nobility that the other ones in the show don't. And finally, obviously, I'm leaving the last to the two main characters. So my 10th question is, will Daenerys break the wheel? So breaking the wheel has kind of been her whole thing. She has that vision in one of the earlier seasons where she's kind of like in one of those places in Essos, and the warlock puts her in like a weird vision thing, and it's snowing and she walks up to the Iron Throne, but then she hears her dragons, which are baby dragons at the time, and then she's like, oh my God, my dragons. So she doesn't even touch the Iron Throne, she walks away. So if that's foreshadowing, maybe she never gets the Iron Throne, maybe she breaks the Iron Throne, and then that's her contribution, being part of the Targaryen line, who are the ones that conquered Westeros. She's like, just kidding, we're not going to do this anymore. Like maybe, you know, she'll turn them into like city-states or their own sovereign kingdoms. Like there's a lot that she could do that can fit into the breaking the wheel thing, you know. And I think obviously one of my questions for her is she going to get knocked up by Jon Snow? So obviously in the 7th season, Jon Snow's like, how do you know that you can't get knocked up? And then she's like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. Maybe the witch is wrong. The witch from the Dothraki witch that tells her she's never going to have a baby and all that stuff. But I mean, I'm sure she didn't know she could have dragons and that she had dragons. And obviously she's down 2 dragons. I'm really interested to see how the dragons, like, are they going to fight each other? Like, do they cancel each other out? Because even though there's 2 on her side, which obviously we see flying into Winterfell, you know, how do they defeat the ice one? Can they defeat him with fire? How does the ice fire affect them? Like, does fire, you know, I don't know. And are the dragons aware that it's their sibling that is now a zombie dragon? So I'm curious about that. Also, can she hatch more dragons? Like, I don't know if that's been addressed. I know that the eggs that she got in the first episode, they were like thousands of years old and they turned into stone, and then magically dragons came out of them. So could they find more dragon eggs? Are there more dragon eggs? Maybe I didn't see that. If there are more dragon eggs in the books or in the series, let me know in the comments below. I'm not really sure. But again, so is there a possibility that she can still keep on procreating? Because I think that that's going to change her arc completely. And she's also, the most important thing I think is that she's no longer the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. So after Viserys or whatever, her brother, who's like crazy and evil, after he dies, she's basically on her mission. She starts like meek and being raped by Khal Drogo and all that stuff. And then she kind of comes into her own with the notion that she's going to go back to Westeros, like her country, and she's going to rule because she's the last living heir to the Targaryens. But obviously we find out that she's not, that her brother Rhaegar had a baby named Jon Snow and that he's legitimate because they were married. So Jon Snow is 100% the heir to the Iron Throne. Is that going to play into the relationship between Daenerys and Jon Snow? Because like I would be pissed if I were her. I'd be like, wow, what did I do all this for? But at the same time, it's also, she finds out she has a family member, which she doesn't have any family members. So there's kind of like a lot of ways that can go, but Daenerys is very hot-headed. So I'm kind of worried too when she finds this out, and the fact that she's banging Jon Snow, maybe, I don't know if I'm assuming she's aware that, you know, her line is the product of incest in any case. So I don't know if maybe that doesn't faze her as much as it does the audience. So there's that. But even if she is not the rightful heir to the throne, will she still rule Westeros? Because just because she's not the heir anymore, Jon Snow could die again, you know, fighting the White Walkers. Jon Snow could become a Fire Walker. I've seen a White Walker. I've seen a bunch of videos about that. So just because Jon Snow is the rightful heir to the throne doesn't mean that he's going to sit on it. And I don't see Jon Snow so much as being a king, not in the way that I don't love him and, you know, appreciate him and all that stuff, but Jon Snow is a warrior and he's an amazing warrior. So it's like, I don't necessarily see him wanting that life. The same way I don't see Arya, which is kind of his heir apparent in the siblings. Like, I don't necessarily see them sitting and ruling over anything. I think that's for Tyrion, that's for Sansa, and that's also for Daenerys more than anybody in terms of who's left and who has somewhat of, you know, the chance to become that. So I think that, you know, my guess is that maybe breaking the wheel means decentralizing the political power in Westeros and then kind of leaving, you know, again, maybe Tyrion, Casterly Rock, Sansa, Winterfell, if all of that is still left. I think that that could be part of breaking the wheel, maybe part of her. And then maybe she can go to Dragonstone with her baby or her dragons, whatever she has left, like literally whatever she has left. So I think that, you know, all of those I think are possibilities, but obviously I think the question that everybody wants to know is what's going to happen to Jon Snow. So in watching the first episode back, I kind of like realized that I think one of the things that endears us so much to Jon Snow is the fact that he wasn't loved by Catelyn Stark, which I always hated her character for that. I never really got into her as a character that much. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's judgmental of me, but I hated that she never loved Jon Snow. It really bothered me. And like he, in the first episode, is calling Eddard Stark like Lord Stark. He doesn't even, and it's like, I'm sure for Eddard, like knowing who he is and all that stuff, he's doing it to protect him, because if anybody finds out that he's actually a Targaryen, like he's done, especially because Robert will be the first one to kill him. And Robert's like, you know, Robert's biffles with Eddard and all that stuff. So I know that there's obviously a reason for all of that. But again, I think that heartbreaking aspect of his life and not being allowed in the feast in the first episode when Robert Baratheon and Cersei and all the Lannisters go and the Baratheons go to visit, like that is like kind of terrible. Not to mention then at the end of season 5 or whatever season it was that he gets killed as a traitor for doing what needs to be done to try to save all these people. Like he's literally been through so much, and so much of his life has been based on the fact that he's a bastard and unwanted. And he has that conversation with Tyrion in the first episode where Tyrion says that all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. But it's like, not even, like, you know, he was not even close to a bastard. He's literally like the king of the world. So, I mean, I'm really curious as to how he's going to react to learning about who his parents are. Because again, like, I feel like if I were him, I'd be pissed first and foremost. It's like, who knew about this? Why didn't I know? Like, why didn't the second, like, you know, anybody find out? Obviously, I think since the travel and the time, maybe the second anybody found out, they did tell him, which would be Sam. Obviously, his uncle, which is Ned Stark, who raised him as his own, obviously didn't tell him. But in the first episode, he did say that when he comes back from King's Landing, he will tell him who his parents are. So maybe he was just waiting for Jon Snow to be older to then tell him. So I'm not necessarily mad at Ned Stark that much for that. But I'd still be pissed if I were Jon Snow. Like, I'd be like, wow. Like, I could have just gone to Essos. Like, I didn't have to, like, you know. But he also got to live with his cousins who, you know, he's still related to the Starks and all that stuff. And he does still, in the first episode, you remember the beautiful relationship that the Stark siblings have. You know, and it's like Arya's obsessed with Jon Snow, and Bran and Arya are chasing each other around because Arya's a better shot than him with the bow and arrow. You know what I mean? It's very cute and sweet. So he's also on his second life. And so that kind of, to me, it could be a bad thing, because it's like, if he was resurrected once, yeah, sure, he could be resurrected again, but he could also be like, please stop resurrecting me. Kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer at the end of Buffy, where she's like, why did you bring me back from the dead? Hello, like all I do is freaking kill people all day. Like, I want to chill. And that's the other thing about him being on the Iron Throne. It's like, is that going to be the best life for Jon Snow? Hell no. Like, it's going to be the same thing. People are going to be trying to kill him. Anybody who's on the Iron Throne, people are going to be trying to kill. So it's like, why would Jon Snow necessarily want that? I don't know. But again, he is the true heir. He's also the only one that's killed a White Walker. So I think that obviously what the buildup for Jon Snow, to me as a character, aside from finding out that he is the heir to the throne, is the fact that he is the one that has killed a White Walker before. So he's the one that has already kind of gotten all the advantages, gone to get the dragon glass and the Valyrian steel swords. So he is pretty much the key to defeating the White Walkers. So I'm assuming that might be his fate. And the book series is called A Song of Fire and Ice, or Ice and Fire, I'm not sure. But, you know, it's not called Game of Thrones. And I think that that might be a clue to how the series ends, as well as how the book ends. Because only the first book is called Game of Thrones. Since the book has the fire and ice metaphor, I think this is really the big climax for that. So in that sense, I mean, it sounds terrible because I love him, he's my favorite character, but I don't really see Jon Snow surviving this season. And again, it might literally be in his best interest, unfortunately. I'm hoping he has knocked up Daenerys so that he has an heir. And I think that he will be very similar to his father, Rhaegar, in that sense, where it's like Rhaegar didn't enjoy killing people, but he had to do it. And then, you know, maybe he does find love, maybe he does produce an heir, and then maybe he does die in battle. That would give him actually the same arc as his father. So I think that from a writing perspective, that might be interesting. Of course, he could transcend that, as many of the other characters do. But I think that that would be a really great legacy for him, having saved Westeros. So I'm just going to say, as long as Jon Snow saves Westeros, I'm going to be happy with that. Would I want to see him on the Iron Throne? I think that Daenerys has been more kind of like longing for that. And however, I think that there are other characters that can sit on the Iron Throne or rule in a capacity that's actually going to be best for the realm. So if you're looking at what's best for the realm, I think that, you know, Jon Snow saving it and being the savior is kind of like a really good broaching of his story and his arc. And then I think there's still a lot of really good people that can still restore peace if there ever really was peace. They're going to have to broker some sort of deal with the White Walkers. Maybe Jon Snow is a part of that. Maybe Bran is a part of that. Maybe Tyrion. He's been the broker for a lot of big power moves since the beginning of the show. So I think that there's going to be kind of like a lot of pieces that are going to have to come together this season. But again, I'm really looking forward to this season. If there's anything I got wrong, please let me know in the comments below. If there's any questions that have already either been answered in the books or you know, things that I may not be taking into consideration, definitely let me know. And I'm going to do a reaction video to the first episode. I'm going to try to do it April 14th. If not, post it the next day. But I'm going to try to just do it right after, because that's why I kind of boned up. And that's why I definitely encourage you to check out the different YouTubes that kind of go into a lot of the lore and a lot of the myth and all that stuff. Just so that it's like, as we watch the 8th season, we're not like wondering about anything. It's like, we know how everything is teed up. We know where everybody is, and now it's game time. So we're going to see how that ends, and I'm really excited. So yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to check out the videos I'm going to be doing throughout the course of the 8th season of Game of Thrones, definitely hit subscribe and leave your comments below, and thanks for watching.